All right, let's talk about something we see all the time. Something so common it's practically invisible, the corporate org chart. But what if I told you that behind all those simple boxes and lines, there's a history of empires, armies, and yeah, a blueprint for absolute power. Let's dig in.
Yeah, you've seen this a million times, right? The classic corporate pyramid. It's kind of just the wallpaper of the professional world. A structure so common, we don't even really see it anymore. It just is.
But did you ever stop and think, where did this thing actually come from? Because, and this is the crazy part, the answer has way less to do with modern business schools and a whole lot more to do with conquest.
So, our story doesn't start in some modern boardroom. Nope. We're heading back in time, out onto the high seas, with a company that was basically its own empire, the East India Company.
Now get this. The East India Company wasn't just some little trading firm. This company had its own private army of 260,000 soldiers. Just let that sink in for a second. At its peak, that was twice the size of the entire British Army. We're talking about a corporation that had the power of a full-on nation-state.
Yeah, it was founded way back in 1600 as a British joint stock company, but it quickly turned from just a group of merchants into a straight-up colonial ruler. And its business model? Pretty simple, really. Make a profit. And they enforce that profit through trade monopolies, taxes, and just raw military power. Okay, and here's where the connection just clicks. Look at the East India Company's structure. You've got a central board in London calling the shots for these regional presidencies. Now look at a modern corporation. You've got a CEO and execs on top overseeing divisional managers. See? It's the exact same blueprint. Central command, specialized divisions, regional control.
So you gotta wonder, where did a company get an idea for this kind of militarized efficiency? Well, the blueprint for that goes back even further, like way further, all the way back to the Roman legion.
You know, Caesar's legions were absolute masterpieces of top-down design. The command structure was super rigid, super simple, and, well, brutally effective. Information and orders flowed one way, and one way only, from the general, down to the centurion, down to the soldier. No questions asked. No room for confusion.
Okay, now let's jump back to our org chart. See that section at the bottom? The line department hierarchy? That right there is the direct descendant of the Roman legion's chain of command. It's a structure built for one thing and one thing only, giving orders and having them followed. And here's the key thing to get. This structure, it was never, ever designed for stuff like collaboration or innovation. No, it was a blueprint for conquest. Its whole purpose was to govern territories, extract resources, and enforce policies from a central command to squeeze out maximum output. Kind of sounds a bit like how some modern companies operate, doesn't it?
So let's put it all together. What happens when you mash up the structure of a colonial trading empire with the command system of a Roman legion? Well, you get the modern org chart. That's its legacy.
I mean, there's a quote from our source material that just hits the nail on the head. It says, "These historical models gave us a pragmatic, if ruthless, blueprint for corporate organization." Ruthless. Wow. So the whole point here wasn't just about leadership or having a legal structure. No, this thing was engineered from the ground up for one thing: total operational control and dominance over a territory. And it doesn't matter if that territory is a whole continent or just a new market. And you really can see this principle everywhere. So you have the simple little pyramid we started with, and then you have a way more complex modern chart. But if you look closely, the DNA is exactly the same. It doesn't matter how tangled the web gets, that fundamental idea of top-down hierarchical control, that's the bedrock. It's baked right in.
Which brings us to the big question, right? In a world where we're always talking about collaboration, teamwork, and flat structures, why on earth does this ancient design stick around? The answer is actually pretty simple. It's a design for power. So when you start looking at the org chart through this historical lens, it stops being this neutral, boring tool for efficiency. You start to see it for what it really is, an inherited design, one that's been perfected over centuries for one specific reason: to concentrate power at the very top and make sure control flows in only one direction, down. So here's a final thought to leave you with. That org chart may be the one hanging on your office wall right now. It's not some neutral diagram from a business textbook. It's a direct descendant of empires and armies. So if our companies are literally built like empires, designed for conquest, what does that make the modern workplace?